I'm going to kick it to Lucy to explain what exactly is people of color, where did this come from, and then we can dig into why we need to dismantle it.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Yeah, so people of color is on its face, on its head, is supposed to be a beautiful it's supposed to be operate as like an umbrella term. However, I think so we know that woman of color is a term that came to be when Black feminists came together. I can't remember there was a feminist conference. I want to say a good 30 some odd years ago, and Loretta Ross of Sister Song, the folks who constructed and gave us reproductive justice as a definition, those women came together and wanted to practice being in political solidarity with indigenous women, Asian women, trans women, and all kinds of folks. And so as Black women, as we always do, as we push our thoughts and our politics and our ethics to the fore, we're always thinking about the collective. And so as part of that collective group and understanding, you have women of color women of color comes to be, people of color comes to be in a very specific kind of way. Okay, boom. Supposed to be an umbrella term. However, the beautiful thing about these words is that they probably were great and appropriate at the time, these umbrella terms. But as our consciousness grows, as the body politic changes, as we interrogate white supremacist language, we come up with better terms. So the thing with POC is that what it's doing is saying like all non-white people. What all non-white people does is that it kind of just pretty much solidifies that whiteness, the default experience, the default humanity, the default identity of people is white, and then everyone else and then everyone else. And so there's a way in which POC is trying to be an umbrella term, and I kind of feel like it's entrenching white supremacist thinking in a very specific kind of way. Now, what happens is we're conflating identity with lived experiences, with an assumption that these lived experiences come with a very particular kind of politic behavior and all that kind of things. So the assumption is that for those of us who are racialized in these United States in a very specific kind of way, we understand what it means to be racialized in a specific kind of way. So we're going to get together, be in political solidarity, and move in a very specific kind of way. But that is not what happened. And this particular election shows us how nefarious, superficial, and empty the term POC is, because it obscures our understanding of what happens, and it doesn't give a full picture. And also, too, like you just said, some people are Rachel Dolezalling and trying to both profit from whiteness and profit from POC, and that's not real, because guess who can never do that? Black people. Black people can never do that. And so POC, and recently Code Switch had an episode on this, like RIP to POC. I think we've reached the limits of POC. We've reached the limits because it's not a proper identifier of the political solidarity that some of us are trying to practice. It doesn't quite grasp that, and people are conflating not being white with having a very particular kind of politic, which is really disrespectful and dehumanizing.
And I think a great frame for this conversation, and really a lot of the conversations that Lucy and I have been having on here, is that if we are to build an anti-racist, anti-fascist coalition for us to be able to build a better future where all of us can thrive and live in our full humanity, then it's going to really take us to do the work and to understand all of the systems that are operating currently, so that we can end up in a better place at the end of this decade, as you like to say.
Yes, we gotta think in decades. We gotta think in decades.
So to just be super rooted in this, and that this is not a like grievance conversation or a shaming conversation. It is really about having a brutally honest and frank intellectual curiosity about where we're at right now so that we can get to where we want to get to. And really, 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 we cannot dismantle white supremacy and or be anti-racist in praxis without understanding that that Latinidad is complicated, that POC is not effective, that anti-Blackness is pervasive across all communities, including in Black communities, that we cannot have any form of liberation without Indigenous sovereignty. And so I just want to be like super like feet firmly planted in this moment for this conversation, because it's about to be a little rough. I'm gonna be real with you. And I think that for me, the term POC is just really a manifestation of being intellectually lazy. Like, why can we not hold Black as an identity, Indigenous as an identity, Asian as an identity? And I mean, I'm going to put Latinx in a separate box, right? But as an identity, instead of having to have an umbrella term, because it is like lazy that we would have to actually spend the time understanding the lived experiences and particular challenges, barriers, and beauty in each of those communities, right? And knowing that I separate Latinx as an identity because it actually overlays all, right? Being Latinx or being Latino or being Latina is not a race. Never has been, never will be. Stop trying to make it a thing that way. It is an ethnicity that represents a geographic area. And we can go into really who gets to be included in Latinx and not, because like, what about Guyana? What about Suriname? What about Belize? What about Haiti? In academia, they are included in the study of Latin America and the Caribbean. They are included. However, when in terms of identity in the United States, they are not. And we could talk about that. I could go on a lot about that. And so in realizing that there are white Latinx folks, there are Black Latinx folks, there are Indigenous Latinx folks, there are Asian Latinx folks, right? That is why it is in a bucket of its own. So when to just sloppily put us all together as POC does not serve us. And I get that we are all in a certain way working to dismantle white supremacy and have to and face discrimination and marginalization and violence and xenophobia by institutions and by white people, to be real, but it's not the same. That does not look the same for all of these particular groups. And so when it comes down to, let's say, so in trying to have solidarity is to also build political power. So if we're having a conversation about building political power, you really have to know who your people are and where they stand, and if we have a shared politic, because then you have a election night 2020 of, wondering how could there be an increase in male support across all ethnicities for Trump, how there could be, an increase in Latinx support in Florida and in Texas in particular, dominating the narrative over the overwhelming Latinx support for Trump in comparison to that of Biden, for example. Like, this whole shock and awe is not actually surprising when you have an understanding of people's culture, identity, lived experience, and politics. And again, we know not all skin folk is your kinfolk. Not all people of color have the same politic and are trying to, what liberation looks like for them is not the same. I mean, for us is not the same. And so, go ahead, Lucy, you were leaning in.
Yeah, I think if we're going to really be the kind of people who do our work and check our inner colonizer, we must resist the seduction to homogenize, and we must resist the seduction to flatten people and communities. Because white supremacy, its understanding of non-white people is that we're all the same, that there is no effort to be made to get to know us and to humanize us. And I think there is a way when people are trying to be anti-racist and trying to do the POC thing, if you don't go deep enough, this is why your praxis of anti-racism has to be deep. It has to have legs. It has to have roots, because you can both uphold white supremacy in one breath and in the same sentence dabble in it, if you're not being critical and interrogating what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So when woman of color feminism teaches me that it is our differences that is the best place for us to build political solidarity. Period. It teaches me not to shy away from the sticky parts. It teaches me not to shy away from where are we radically different, where actually that doesn't I don't suffer from this, but because I'm so clear that I am politically in line with you, I'm going to show up for you because I know you're going to show up for me, because I know our liberations are inextricably tied. That is a humanizing thing. The more I get to know your nuances, the more I stand I'm able to hold competing ideas at the same time about myself and others. That is how I combat that thing that makes me want to dehumanize and flatten and homogenize everyone. So neoliberalism, capitalism is always asking you to make things easy. You don't want to do that? There's an app for that. Somebody else will do that. There's the gig economy, right? Which is why there's 5011. There is someone on the internet ready to do something that you don't want to do. But here's the thing, we cannot outsource our critical thinking. Now, 70 million people outsource their critical thinking to Donald Trump. Black men, queer people, white women, right? What is it? 18% of Black people voted for Black men voted for Donald Trump. So what does that tell us? That means everyone, irrespective of race and ethnicity, knows someone who voted for Donald Trump. So that means our understanding of who my people are must go beyond this. It does not matter who that person dates, is willing to date, their race or ethnicity. Political solidarity must start with, what do you believe? Do we have a shared vision of the future? Do we have a shared vision of what social justice is? Do we want everybody to be okay? Or are we going to operate in the individual? And so, yes, last decade, I think it's really important, right? Lots of words exploded. Intersectionality, marginalized, vulnerability, trauma, all of those words exploded and came into the mainstream consciousness. Very good. Now let's go deeper, because knowing someone is Black, queer, trans, a woman, is in a mixed race marriage, adopts children, has a special needs kid, does not tell me how they will vote, does not tell me they're not a Nazi. It does not. We need to start locating ourselves politically. Are you a Nazi? Are you not? Are you for fascism? Are you not? Are you for gender liberation, or are you not? We need to stop having superficial conversations, because premature death, people are dying. People and this is not an abstraction. And so who are our people? And I want to build, this is why you will hear me always talking about an anti-racist coalition. I don't know nothing about POC. I don't know nothing. And especially in South Florida, when white Cubans, white Latinx, white Dominicans, white Peruvians, white Venezuelans, everyone and their mama who is white, Blanquita, who is white in their country, playing games in your face. Like, it's harmful, it's hurtful. It's harmful. There's nothing ambiguous about your whiteness. You white, you're not POC. And so it's just like, we can't have nice things. So this umbrella term that was supposed to do something else, white people have come in and perverted it. And now guess what? Now everyone is, not all of us who are racialized in a very specific kind of way. It's like, we don't want to sit at the POC table because this is the plastics. It's like we're in the Mean Girls. It's like, I'm not part of that. So it's just like, whiteness won't allow us to have nice things. Let's get specific. Who are you? If you're white in your country, baby, you white over here. And guess what? if you're second, third generation and you've never been to your country, where your people are from, perhaps prioritize doing that once it's safe and we have a vaccine, so that you can experience your whiteness in Latin America, and so that you don't come over here and play games.
And I would say that it also, by having these conversations, requires us to be sharper. So also, when we have conversations where we're trying to educate and engage folks who may not think like us, we have to be able to work through that and to be able to have responses to people's questions, to be able to struggle with not just blanketly believing in something because I went to a workshop and it sounded great, but that I actually truly fundamentally believe in it because I can wrestle with it. I can have tension points. I can mold it and I can shift it and I can see where the gaps are and where the failings are, because there is no one solution. And so when I think of the term POC, and particularly I had a conversation with an artist 2 weeks ago who came to Miami as a part of a artist residency that was focused around immigrants, and he said something that struck me and I'm still unpacking. You could be 10th generation Asian American and never be seen as American in this country. So when we talk about
that's real
POC and being a person of color, we are not experiencing being a person of color, being non-white in the United States in the same way. And so when people carelessly throw out the word white passing Latinx, like, that has a history and a meaning that is very, very specific to Black and Indigenous people in this country. And so you cannot, again, it's intellectual laziness. And I understand that being able to figure out where you fit in this society and in these power structures is difficult and uncomfortable, especially if you are actively working towards dismantling white supremacy. But I'm gonna need you to do the work and come a little harder, because, like, if somebody sees me from 3 blocks away, I'm still gonna be Black. There's no ambiguity around it. If somebody sees an East Asian person from 3 blocks away, they know that person is not white. Can Latinx folks say the same? Can white Latinx folks say the same? They cannot.
No.
They do not have a lived experience that is similar to folks that are not white. And wrestle with that and deal with that. And, like,
I sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I question, like, I was talking to someone yesterday and I was just like, I actually don't have a new way to say what I've been saying. But the thing is, people don't listen to Black people. Like, everyone in a white supremacist society is doing the hard work to unpack their identity. White Latinx people are not unique in this experience. Stop trying to unicorn yourself. You are not a unicorn. You are not special. Black people, even dark as me, we have to sit down and wrestle with ourselves and understand, like, because you're fed a steady diet of anti-Blackness. So you have to figure out, who am I? Who am I not? Like, how will I embody myself? How will I embody my Blackness? So to me, it's just like, no one in this context gets away with not having to wrestle with your identity. So if Black dark-skinned people are doing it, if East Asians who are 3rd, 4th generation American and they have to reconcile themselves, why can't you? Why can't you? You're not. So I let us resist this idea and this impulse to make our traumas, to make our identity issues special and unique. It is not special and unique. There have been textbooks, anthologies, blog posts, Tumblr posts, you name it, talking about identity. Baby, get you a therapist, get you a rigorous reading practice, get you a journaling practice, get you a mirror, and stop lying.
Accept the fact that you actually don't want to actively dismantle white supremacy, and you, like, That's a thing too.
Exactly. And what is whiter than a white person avoiding the fact that they're white? What? That is how you know you white. That's how you know you white. That's how you know you white. Because
So true.
who else has time to navel gaze and wonder, am I white? Am I white? Like, no. It's just like, yo, you hate being white? Fine. That's your lot. It's your life. Spend your time hating what you need to hate. However, stay out of our face, stay out of our comments, stay out of our coalitions. Don't bring that spirit of confusion over here, because we are not
also
confused.
Don't profit off of your confusion.
And okay, now you talking, because here's the thing. White Latinx folks have made entire identities, careers, built businesses, built empires around this white construction of Latinx. Because really, it's white people who created this definition of white Latinx. So with this othering, for example, Eva Longoria. How is Eva Longoria a person of color? How is she a woman of color? The woman is white. And she has an ethnicity. So to me, it's just like, why do we keep forgetting that white people don't have an ethnicity? White people are Italians, they're Croatians, they're Russian, they're from a whole host of places.
So why
all of a sudden
with food, with culture?
Like, why all of a sudden you speak Spanish, boom, all of a sudden you're just now your whiteness has made you mythically brown. It's rooted in lies. It's a grift. It's dangerous. I have a little bit of compassion for people who are coming into the realization of their identity pretty late in life around their whiteness, but only to a point, only to a minute, only to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, white supremacy hurts me. It hurts me. It kills me. It kills me and my people. The fact that you have the luxury to spin out of control and navel gaze and be and whatever, and still never land and make the proper decisions that you need to make. It's dangerous and disingenuous. And quite frankly, I have reached a point in my politics, in my analysis, I will no longer tolerate that level of deceit in my place in space. And people need to understand, if you come from a colonized people, there is a very high chance that you have Black, Indigenous, and white people within your DNA. That does not mean you are now white. You are now Black. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's exhausting. I'm tired.
This is where I'm like, I don't know how you do the work that you do, because I don't have the patience. I love everyone. Like, listen, you can find your path, have your journey, do your struggle, but what you're not going to do is try to then police folks' experience in the United States and think that you can be the representative of what it means to be a melanated person in these United States, because you don't know. And that is where I have a fundamental issue. And so I think of folks who are grifting, like literally thinking
totally grifting.
They will be the forebearers to bring about a transformational, progressive, multiracial coalition who cannot own their own whiteness, and who operate as white people in spaces in this multiracial coalition, right? How are you going to be the oppressor trying to lead the oppressed to liberation? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I like to take it back a step further. This was another aha moment for me, because I was struggling with this too.
Right.
So I say this to say, settler colonialism in the Americas is actually a uniform experience.
Yes.
From Canada down to the very tip of Paraguay. We have all experienced Indigenous peoples being marginalized, murdered, etc. We've all experienced European white folks coming and colonizing and setting up economic and political systems which perpetually hold them in power. And we have all experienced the importing of enslaved Black people and indentured Asian folks to this hemisphere. Period. Every point, everywhere from the tip top of Nova Scotia and Canada down to the very, very end of Chile, bordering like close to Antarctica. That is the experience of the Americas. That is an American experience. That is a Latin American experience. That is a Caribbean experience. That is a Central American experience. Again, why nobody is a freaking unicorn. To say that, we cannot, in good conscience, assume that folks who are plantation owners in their home country is going to migrate to the United States and all of a sudden assimilate into being an oppressed person.
Come on, somebody.
More in common with a Southern white person than they do a, Black Haitian person. For example, I can only speak about myself. So, like, if you think about it, and this is the same thing again that we see all folks who migrate from the Caribbean, from South America, from Central America, depending on their racial identifier, assimilate into and integrate into the United States in a very particular kind of way. Because guess what? You don't lose your social, political, and racial analysis by hopping on a plane and coming here and experiencing some discrimination and xenophobia based on your language. Like, that is not terrible.
Right. And so what we need to make clear is that, yes, white Latinx folks, their abuela, abuelita, their auntie, their whatever, themselves, they have experienced discrimination because whiteness, Anglo-Saxon
whiteness in the United States,
will be like, yeah, you're white, but you're not white like me. Yeah, you did experience discrimination. I'm sure those people did make those xenophobic comments. Xenophobia, that stuff around your ethnicity is not the same as a Black person experiencing anti-Blackness because of their race. It's not the same as an East Asian who's third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation United Statesians being told to go back. Go back where? Go back where? So it's just like discrimination means one thing, anti-Blackness means one thing, race is a thing, ethnicity is its own thing, anti-Blackness is its own thing. We have got to stop collapsing these words and using and interchanging them and making them like they're synonymous. They are not synonymous. You can be white and experience discrimination over your ethnicity and it not be a racialized situation. Like, yeah, like that's possible. That's quite possible. And how do people radically be with that? And I also think there are some people who think, I think some people actually think there's some cachet, there's cultural cool points in being oppressed. I think there's a way that some people look at Black people's resistance and they think it's cool. They think it's cool. They think it's a wave. They think it's like a genre of music this thing that we're doing. So they want in on that. And so they know just being white is quote unquote boring. Just being white and like whatever and having this ethnicity, it's kind of whatever. But what if I make myself indigenous though? What if I make myself Black though? Then I get to be the extra spicy Latina. And it's just like on one level, you saying like don't stereotype you in that other way. In another level, you take the stereotype to commodify and the profit off of it. It's just like, is it Uchi Wally Wally or is it one mic? You can't do both. Like you can't do both.
They don't
can't do both. It's like you're right. It's like pick a thing. And so I really think that some people are jealous, which is this is how trash anti-Blackness is. I think some people look at Black people and the fact that we're resisting, the fact that we're organizing, the fact that we're pushing the culture in a very specific kind of way. And people are like, yeah, forget that. We want in on that. And what can we do? So what we're going to do is take Latinx, which is an ethnicity, and try to low key turn it into a racial identity so that we can play games. And I, as a social scientist, say not on my watch. No.
It's again, it's a tiring conversation. I think that there is like, I don't know, there's a fine line between appreciation and appropriation. And it's like folks want to appropriate the Black struggle when it's like, y'all have your own struggle and it is hard, and own that and move through that. And yes, seek inspiration and wisdom and be in solidarity with folks and be in community with folks. But like, stop trying to make it a thing, which was the title of this conversation, because I'm tired of people working overtime to I want to say both like financially and spiritually profit off of being a part of a larger collection of marginalized people, because it's not going to move us forward. And that's what I care about. I care about not being oppressed anymore. I care about not being a minority. I care about not struggling like that. Like, I actually am single-mindedly focused on liberation.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people are single-mindedly focused on attention, on being centered. Like, again, I just think, I honestly think we as neoliberal subjects, we don't put enough time into investigating ourselves and tending to our wounds and our traumas. So it really comes out in the most weirdest of ways. And so I think it's really weird to look at what Black people are going through and to be vexed by it, to be jealous by it, and then try to like do and usurp it. And it's as a Black person who sees this, it's vexing, because it's just like, what happens is, and because of anti-Blackness, Black people are both hyper visible, invisible, superhuman, and animalistic all at the same time. Whatever the situation calls for, that is what will happen. So it's just like, we're hyper visible because we're fighting against corporal death. We're literally fighting against our death. And people are just like, man, look at them. Look how they're, it's just like, it's weird. It's perverted. And it's just like, and I don't think people have ill intent the way Nazis do, like, let's kill all Black people. It's just a weird fixation around not tending to your emotional stuff. And so your emotional stuff gets sloppy and it starts to hemorrhage and to leak into everywhere. However, I really want us to get to the like, how this shows up politically and how this showed up in the polls and how this showed up within the elections, because this is where the inability to, because here's the thing, right? If Latinx is a thing, if white Latinx are both white and people of color, low key, then you're going to have to take these critiques. If Latinx is an identity that you're willing to die for because you made money off of it, it gives you social capital, then you got to hear these critiques. And baby, this election cycle, as we go on and continue to do this post-mortem, Latinx folks ain't not gonna like what people have to say about what we saw within their voting patterns and habits. So I know you're the poli-sci nerd. Put your hat on, sis. Take us to class.
So there were, and obviously there are folks watching who may not be from Florida. So like, disclaimer, we're gonna get into the weeds about Florida a little bit. Okay, bear with us. So I have one critique around polling in general. Just knowing that polling does not replace grassroots organizing, conversations with human beings, canvassing, phone banking, text banking. So if y'all don't have a field game, don't be surprised when you don't get the results that you expected. Just because you saw a poll tell you what people are going to do. Number one. Number two, polls. Go ahead.
I'm dying. For those of you who came to my ungentrifying intersectionality, you know what I'm about to say. If you don't have an intersectional analysis, I don't care how fancy your degree is, what Ivy League school you went to, how fancy the software you're using for your polls, it will always be wrong because you do not have intersectionality to use as an analytic tool. And therefore, these white men who live in a segregated America cannot develop polls, cannot analyze polls that is going to talk about the racialized America, these United States that we live in. This is where Black feminist thought and theory is crucial, because if those people would understand what intersectionality is, took some humanity courses, took some Black feminist courses, everybody and their mama would not be so wrong today. Okay, I'm done.
Well, I mean, and that goes to the fact that the methodology and the analysis were both wrong. Because you can't have in the year 2020 of our Lord Savior be relying on making some calls to landlines, number one. Then thinking you're gonna just add some points and jiggle the math to factor in the fact that you didn't talk to enough people of color. What if, like, the entire rainbow of folks, the entire constellation of folks, the fact that you didn't go to, like, speak to a rural Black person, like the fact that you didn't speak to a rural Latinx person, the fact that, like, you didn't talk to an indigenous person living in the like in Nevada. They don't. That's my quick and dirty answer is status quo. They don't. There are some really great folks, social scientists, who are from marginalized communities that are doing the work to make sure that there can be solid data coming out of our communities. However, the polls that you see, Nate Silver, and I love Nate, I'm sorry, me and Lucy talked about this. I have been following, I listen to 538 like literally religiously every single week. But anyway, as well as the Weeds. So yes, both Matt Iglesias and Nate are trash, but you know, you got to understand how people are doing it to be able to have a critique, right? Because I don't make blanket critiques based off of a tweet. So don't let the hot takes derail your whole situation. The fact is that we cannot have white men design and analyze public polling data or run public polling, period. Because they are not doing the work that they need to do to be able to actually have an honest assessment of the margin. So here's the thing. Black people, Latinx people, indigenous people, Asian people are deciding elections. That's what we learned in 2020.
Period.
But like Biden wouldn't win Nevada without indigenous people. Like Biden wouldn't win Pennsylvania without Black people. Biden wouldn't win Michigan without Arab folks. Like, let's be real about the fact that we may not be the numerical majority individually as groups. However, we have enough sway to shift elections and be a decisive margin, which is again why it is a lucrative place to be. But wait, that's a whole other topic of a conversation. But I will say that for folks who actually are in community and we're talking to their people, we knew there were Black men that were going to vote for Trump. I knew Haitian people that were going to vote for Trump. We knew that Cubans were falling for there was a large section of Cubans and Venezuelans that were falling for the WhatsApp propaganda that was circulating. We knew that folks were thinking at this point, disillusioned to think that their vote even mattered because we had a president for a year talk about fraud, right? And so for the folks who are in community and the folks doing the work, we knew what a pollster based out of Massachusetts did not. And would never have the intellectual curiosity to understand, and is now wasting our airtime trying to over-explain why, it's in the margin of error, plus minus 2. Nah, it's not gonna work. It's not, especially when there's so much at stake with each successive election, especially when white supremacy is holding on to its last grasp, literally trying to pull every trick in their playbook to maintain power. We cannot be relying on the expertise of folks who know nothing about our communities to be involved in our path to liberation. We can't. So as much as I love 538, and I don't know how Claire Malone survives being listening to.
Oh my God, Claire's still on that show?
Yes, she is.
Oh Lord.
Claire, listen. So both the Weeds and 538 only have one woman, and no people of color.
Okay, let's pause there. So So one of my guilty pleasures is the Daily from the New York Times. The New York Times is problematic in a lot of ways because they spent the first 2 years of the Trump presidency opining and attempting to give us very nuanced hot takes of the Trump voter. Anyways, I love Michael Barbaro.
Which got us nowhere because folks doubled down.
Thank you. Why? Okay. Boom.
Including Republicans. But anyway.
Okay. That's a separate hot take though. I love the Daily. I love Michael Barbaro's voice. It is soothing to me. I be mad when he on vacation when he not there. But anyways, put it to the side. As well done as the Daily is, every day I listen to it, I say, I'm filtering in my brain and I'm saying, I'm filtering through a Black feminist understanding, through my social scientist brain, through my Haitian brain, through my queer brain, and all of that. All of that to say that is a good show that could be made great if you could. I can tell that their team is probably diverse. I'm sure the New York Times is for the most part diverse.
And also knowing a production team and an editorial team are two different things. Because
the production is on point. The
production overwhelmingly is represented by people of color.
However, you can tell there is no gender lens, there's no racial lens, there's no queer lens, there's no indigenous lens. So every single day I listen to that show, I filter it through my own intersectional lens. And again, I'm a 4th-year doctoral student. The average American is not doing that and has not been trained to do that. I think that's unfair and that's not okay. I think that's unfair and that's not okay. And so I'm not saying because these people are white and they're male, they can't do that work. But if they cannot,
they don't do the work.
If they don't submit themselves to a different pedagogy, in a different methodology, in a different worldview, they are already working themselves out of a job. So today's episode of, I think it was yesterday's episode of The Daily, the guy was like, it's either something in polling has to change or we are gonna fundamentally have to stop polling. And you know what I heard? You need to move white men out the way. Because if you move them out the way, baby, you'll figure out another way. Because again, how many text messages you got during this election cycle, right? Okay, so grassroots folks are figuring out how to reach us in a culturally competent way. Yeah, baby, don't nobody got my parent. The only reason I got a landline because I live with my mom and my daddy right now. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have a landline. And you know what? Now because I live here,
my mom doesn't even have a landline. So really, I don't even know where I would find somebody with a landline. I guess I'd have to come to your house because I ain't seen it in the last 5 years.
And as someone with a landline, I must say, I don't get that many Democratic polls or polls polling. And now when I do answer the phone and it's a poll, I answer. But I just, even then, for those of us, for the Black people, the indigenous people, whatever, who do have polls, sometimes I wonder, are we being called at the same rate as other people are being called? Because I actually don't think we are. Because my parents, because I'm here and they know I'm super nerdy and whatever, they are a little bit more inclined to do a survey. We're not getting them kind of calls though. So to me, yeah. So this is, we have to just be really clear. It's like, we are, the United States of America that the rest of us live in is not the one. I'm sure the Nate Silvers, the Matt Iglesias, Barry Weiss, Michael Barbaro, you name it, they don't live in that America. And if they don't get the analysis and learn from us the way we had to learn from them, they're literally making their jobs obsolete. But I really want to get into the weeds of why the POC sham met its match in this election.
So a really concrete example, if you had a 60-year-old first generation Jamaican woman living in Kendall and a 60-year-old Cuban American first generation woman living in Kendall, their politic is radically different. They will not be voting the same. But yet they're what? Women of color, right? And so you cannot, this is where getting into the nuance and understanding people's lived experience and the trauma that they're carrying and the histories that they're carrying and how they identify makes a really big difference, which is also why I say to disaggregate the data and actually be able to have the 50 million kinds of Black people and the 50 billion kinds of Indigenous people and the 50 billion kind of Latinx people like white people get in terms of polling. Because if you had, there is no poll right now that goes to that level of specificity. So when you come to election night 2020 and the numbers are coming in and 2 state Senate races that were not even on the radar of being contested got lost,
girl,
to JJR and to Javier Fernandez, because nobody was doing the analysis of what was going on in those districts, right? So you have to see that living under an umbrella, number one, thinking that you're not going to factor in, particularly, we are going to spend some time talking. I was like trying to get away from not having this conversation, but we are going to go there talking about Cuban Americans in South Florida, because Cuban Americans in South Florida are also different than Cuban Americans in Tampa, or different than Cuban Americans in Jersey, and they are different.
Yes.
My one quick editorial note about that is, yes, 55% voted for Donald Trump, 45% voted for Joe Biden. So we are not erasing the 45% of Cubans that did not vote for Donald Trump. That is super important. That is not zero, right? And I know folks that have been working really hard to change that. However, we need to, and we talked about this unicorn syndrome earlier on. Cuban Americans are not the only people to have lived under communism, to have lived under dictatorship, to have experienced a coup, to have been just coming to the United States with trauma, to have not been, the same thing for Venezuelan Americans, have not been the only people to live under socialism, to not have economic depression, starvation, migration, all of these things, fleeing from your life. Like, that is not a unique experience.
Girl, say it again. No disrespect. It is not a unique experience. Save us the melodrama.
And so it is not to diminish that experience, because it is very real. It is just not a unique experience. That is the key difference. And so some soul searching and some deeper digging has to be done into why, in exchange for amassing political power in this country, literally holding the state of Florida hostage, I feel, is that like, that solidarity cannot be built there. Like, there's just a really big disconnect. And it is a perfect example of why Latinx as an identity and POC as an umbrella is not sufficient. And until we unpack that, we are not going to be able to move forward towards progress. Because honestly, I know Ukrainian folks, I know West African folks, a lot of folks from Eastern Europe, that, like, Haitian folks, like, like, there are plenty of people that have lived under dictatorship, that has had a very populist ideology, that has been socialist or communist aligned or communist light. Chinese folks are not migrating to the United States and then being assimilated into conservatism.
Right.
That is not happening to millions of people. And so we need to dig a little deeper as to why that unique trauma is so overwhelming compared to other folks' trauma. Because other folks also had family members murdered, have also been political prisoners, have also had everything taken away from them, have also come with nothing to be able to do that. Bhutanese, I'm like, really, there are tons of other people.
So I have 2 editorial notes. If you are a white Latinx person and your people did come from, that you're Venezuelan and Cuba, and the socialism, communism conversation is really big. Thank you.
Israel, though.
God, I feel like I have children. Anyways, whatever.
There we go.
Oh God. Okay. So editorial note. If you are from those communities, and yes, I don't disavow you of the experience your people had under those regimes. However, if you're going to be serious about being anti-racist and supporting Black people, like Black people writ large, Black people in these United States of America, then you have to understand that Black people, our understanding and relationship to socialism is going to be radically different, and it's going to be informed by our Blackness, because capitalism is racial. Black people's body created capitalism. We are the capital, which means there is no ethical capitalism. There is no anti-racist capitalism. There is no feminist capitalism. Capitalism is violent. Capitalism requires that people be racialized, that there be a caste system, that there be exploitation, and that people die for little wages. So that's number one. Number two, any political ideology that does not take gender and race seriously will fail. I don't care where around the globe it happens. That political ideology, I don't care how beautiful, how revolutionary it is, if it does not take gender seriously and race seriously, it will become perverted, it will be exploited, and it will be trash. So I think that's really important for people to understand why socialism in the United States of America is going to ring differently for us, and especially for Black people. And secondly, the United States of America already has socialism. Libraries, public beaches, parks, the highway I-95, that is socialism. The public education. Medicaid. So to me, right, Medicaid. So to me, it's just like, let's not act as if we don't already have a kind of a blended system in a very specific kind of way. That's number one. And number two, how can socialism be so bad, but fascism is okay? How can authoritarianism and anti-Blackness be okay? So to me, it's just like, when I hear, the Miami Freedom Project posted something from this Cuban American woman. I'm sorry, that article was a no bueno. Editorially, if I was the editor, I would have been like, sis, are you sure you want to print this? Because I don't think you want this to be attached to your name and your byline in perpetuity on these internet streets. Because the fact of the matter is, it's okay for us to admit that our people are racist, are xenophobic, and anti-Blackness. Cuban Americans align themselves with white supremacist xenophobic power because it serves them. Because they uphold the xenophobia, they uphold the anti-Blackness, they uphold the racism, and that's okay. The Black men I know who voted for Donald Trump are misogynists, are patriarchal terrorists. They are anti-Black in a very specific kind of way, and that's okay. I don't love them any less, but I have to tell the truth about who they are. I'm not gonna make it seem as if like, oh, they just got caught up and they fell into a hole. No, I can tell the truth about my loved one. My loved one is misogynist, patriarchal, anti-Black, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, and they voted for Donald Trump.
And I do not have to make them a victim. Folks into that same category, but
repeat that again.
I would also add Vietnamese folks into that same category, knowing that, again, this is not a unicorn situation.
So this is to me where it's just like, all of us within our communities have work to do. Black people, and we've already had this conversation. We have a lot of work to do among Black people around the abortion stuff, the trans stuff, homophobia, classism, you name it. If we're gonna build, and I have a story about the xenophobia. I have a story, but I'll let that go. We have a lot of work to do, and so this is why it's just like specificity. We have to put POC on the shelf and get to the hard work of organizing within our communities so that we could build across communities. That's it. It's not going to be a POC coalition or liberation that makes that happen.
Exactly. And so I just really want folks to come away with a few things. Although you did a really good recap. Sorry, I was looking at my notes on the side because we do have notes, people.
Hello. Do we have questions?
Do we have any questions? There's been a lot of comments in the chat. I've been like looking, but kind of not looking. Let me check real quick. If you have any comments, any, this happens when I have two screens happening at the same time. One of the things that, okay, here we go. Oh wow, there are a lot of comments. Okay. We cannot outsource our critical thinking. Got some snaps. Somebody said that they've never used the term POC and they don't know why anyone does either. And I do want to, and I had this in a pre-conversation like that I had with like Alana and like some other folks. I would say that most people do not identify as a person of color. It is this artificially created movement to develop a political bloc and get cachet. It is not an actual, like folks, the average person does not walk around saying, I'm a person of color. So definitely that is a thing.
And also, can I be honest? I low-key judge people who use that, because I just feel as if like, obviously our brains are judging machines and that's what they do. I just think it's okay for us to take the time and list who we're talking about and comma. It's okay. It's okay. Because I don't think if we're talking about Black people and Indigenous people, we ain't talking about people of color writ large. Because those groups of people are experiencing something so acutely different that cannot be compared to anything else. They can't be compared to each other, and they can't be compared to other people. So it's just like it's so anti-Black and anti-Indigenous to always be cramming this POC narrative. Nah, fam.
Which is also interesting to see the crumblings of that. The preface to this conversation was really the introduction of BIPOC over the last year, because Black and Indigenous folks been saying, actually, we can't be in this POC umbrella because we are not the same. That is not comparable experiences. And so, we just have to get sharper. Another person said that it was freeing to stop saying white passing.
Ooh, you know how much I hate that term because that's not real.
It's not. Well, okay.
Actually,
it is real. It is real. Okay, so quick history lesson. And totally correct me if I'm wrong, because this is not. And then there was also this comment that I want to talk about. That white passing in the United States was very much an experience and identity for Black people and Indigenous people who were like racially mixed and were able to, therefore, let's say they had a Black parent and a white parent, or they had an Indigenous parent and a white parent, they were able to actually access better education, a different set of jobs, and operate in the United States as a white person, leaving their family behind. And so we can, and the key thing is it really required the severing of all ties with their family to not get found out.
Right.
Because their lives were on the line.
Period.
So it has aggravated my soul to hear people with zero cultural context or any connection to those experiences say, oh, I'm white passing. Because no, you're not. Because guess what? If somebody finds out that you have a Black parent or a Black grandparent or an Indigenous parent or an Indigenous grandparent, your life isn't on the line.
Hello.
You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your housing. You're not going to lose your life. So let's clean it up with the language, because again, words have meaning and history.
Right. And I would even argue to say it's a very small fraction of people who can honestly say they're racially ambiguous or passing, right? This is like
Mariah Carey.
Right?
Like I think of Mariah Carey. Or
as what? As white passing? Really?
No, as a person who, like, I mean, there are people who really think Mariah Carey white. I mean, it's fascinating considering how much she claims her Blackness. But anyway.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like, I don't know.
Like Lionel Richie's Sophia Richie. Sophia Richie actually, in her finally talking about her racial identification, spoke about passing for white and basically growing up.
But who let her pass for white though? I feel like Black people, we see our people.
I mean, I know.
And you know what? I don't want to essentialize, but I just feel like.
But I'm saying that
I think there are some people who take a lot of liberty with passing, and I'll be like, where? Passing where? Who? Yeah, white people don't see you, but baby.
I mean, I would actually argue that white people do see you, and sometimes Black people giving people too much credit. But that's me. But I will say that like it was just interesting for just her example of saying that she would have folks say really racist and fucked up things and very anti-Black things to her, around her, including her in this conversation, because they thought that she was white. And that is where the passing, that is the lived experience of passing.
Right. Okay? Right.
Like as an example of like what that actually looks like in real life. Another person said, for so long, whiteness required full ethnic assimilation. And this, I want to like have a whole conversation about this, but
repeat that again.
That for so long, whiteness required full ethnic assimilation. In the year 2020, they said the 10 is big. We're gonna take all kinds of whites. Okay, you can keep your language, you can keep your religion, as long as you are as invested in white supremacy as we are. And that's why you have the president of the Proud Boys and all of these other folks doubling down on white supremacy and actively being fighters. They literally, you see themselves as instruments of upholding white supremacy, because they said, okay, I'm good. The door can be shut behind me. I now have access to all this power, and I'm going to do anything in my ability to be able to maintain it.
And which is why I find it interesting, right? Like the number of like people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, whatever, have went up for Trump. And I have a gnawing suspicion that the majority of those people are white.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I recently did a training over the summer, a series of training over the summer with the majority of the people in this group were somewhere on the queer and trans spectrum. And what I saw is that all of these white queer and trans people have more in common with white heterosexual folks than they have in common with Black and brown queer and trans folks, because of their whiteness and because of their whiteness and their class status. So it's not to say that white queer and trans people do not experience violence, because we do live in a very queer antagonistic world. But this is the thing that just makes me so sad and makes me so angry, because it's just like anyone who can flirt with white supremacy and who can be allowed into the white supremacist tent, when no one's looking, they scurry into that tent. And so the same way this whole POC, the same way these same white queer and trans people get to hide behind the fatality and mortality rates of Black, queer, and trans people, and it becomes this universal queer and trans experience. And it's like, no, it is not a universal queer and trans experience. And that is a whole different, messy, complicated, nuanced conversation that don't nobody want to have. And so when we see 18% these Black men, I'm just gonna assume these are like cis, able-bodied, heterosexual folks with a certain economic status. You have these white women, certain economic status. You have these white queer and trans people, a certain economic why? They want to uphold white supremacy. They want to uphold dominance. This is a backlash. These people don't want trans people to have rights in a very specific kind of way. And we also have to be honest with the fact that a lot of queer people are not trans friendly. They are not trans friendly. They do see trans people, they do see gender expansive people as a threat to their ability to be assimilated into this larger project. So like everybody's communities have intra-community problems. Everybody's community has intra-community problems. So I don't know. A lot of things we're going to have to stop collapsing. A lot of things we're going to have to stop collapsing and start asking ourselves some serious questions. It's just like, what is our actual shared identity here? What is our actual shared identity? What is the thing we're actually going to build on? What is the thing that's going to hold us? What's the glue that's going to hold us together? It ain't just because we Black and we Haitian and we're first gen. Our relationship, there's a political solidarity here because there's a lot of Black Haitian women that I don't fuck with, right, and will not, because we don't want the same things. We're not moving in the same circles. And I don't know. I do know. 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. 71 million. Y'all, we have work to do. I don't know how this Georgia Senate race is going to shake up. So we don't even know what Joseph Robinette Biden will even be able. Well, we don't even know what the homie going to be able to get done because we're not too sure how the Senate race is going to shake out.
Already said he's not with it. He's like,
right
as possible.
So put that on the shelf, right? So let the goons in the House, the goons in the Senate figure it out. But us everyday folk who rubbed elbows with people who voted for Donald Trump, they're not all QAnon. These are sober-minded people,
intelligent
who voted for fascism, who are totally okay with erasing trans people within our legal understanding, just okay with xenophobia, okay with classism, just okay with all of this. I want to know, and the holidays are coming, fam. What is our strategy? Because some of those people, I'm not saying it's our job to try to win 71 million people over, but we really should be thinking about how do we strengthen within ourselves our progressive leftist self, because we have a lot of work to do internally, and how will we open up the door, put down the bridge, and usher new people into our fold? Because we, at the end of the day, I'm always thinking about how are we building and expanding and strengthening our anti-racist, anti-fascist coalition? Because all 71 million of those people don't believe in QAnon. They are not lost in the sauce. They are not quote unquote crazy. These are white people. These are people of color. These are Black people. These are indigenous people who need to be talked to in a very specific kind of way. Not begged, not y'all know what I mean. Within reason, within integrity, with ethics, and practicing consent, because people don't want to hear our shit all the time, and they have a right not to want to hear it all the time. But like, I guess to me, at the end of the day, like, okay, POC is not a thing. What is a thing? And an anti-racist coalition is a thing. How do we build that thing? How do we strengthen that thing? How do we get clear on that thing? What's the ethics within that thing? What are we doing? I want to practice solidarity with people who want to practice solidarity. Where are my people? I kind of feel like I know who my people are, but especially for my people in South Florida, we have 4 years, we have work to do. Because the anti-Blackness, that's Black people against Caribbean Black folks, that is its own problem in South Florida. And the major victims of that is Haitian people who try to run for office in South Florida. That's number one. Number two, you got the white Cuban American thing holding our progressiveness hostage. Something has got to get done.
I think that there is tons of work to do, as Lucy alluded to. I have not given up hope. I do think that it is possible. I think that we need to be having the difficult conversations. I think that there are two fatal flaws to progress. One is not having the difficult, nuanced conversations with your own people. So that means your aunt, that means your uncle, that means your grandparents, that means your parents, that means your siblings, rather than cut them off, leave the group WhatsApp, whatever it may be. You actually need to be having these conversations and actively, particularly working against the disinformation that is so prevalent on these internet streets and on these tech streets and on these WhatsApp streets.
WhatsApp, girl. They're really trying to get our parents on WhatsApp.
It's super easy to forward fake things. I mean, all things, but particularly fake things. And I think that it is going to require white Latinx folks to accept that they're white. Like, there are plenty of white folks that are doing the work to be anti-racist. Like, it's not
plenty, child, plenty, and a lot that I like and that I love, child. Again, my favorite kind of white people are the white people who are okay with being white. So that's my favorite kind of white people. And you know what? There's not enough of them. There's truly not enough. They're not trying to do nothing special. They're not trying to whatever. And they you know, if they're Irish, they wanna share their cultural stuff with you. They wanna whatever. They tell you their quirky things, this, that, and the third. But they are rooted. They are centered in their whiteness. Because if you're not centered in your identity, you are no one's ally. You are dangerous, and you are caustic. You are radioactive until you get clear about your identity. Because if you're not clear about your identity, how will you have strategies and interventions to dismantle, divest, and disrupt white supremacy? From what place and space are you going to do that work if you're scattered and chaotic around your identity? And no shade, if you are married, you have children, and you are like all over the place with your identity, Lucy loves you. However, get it together quick, fast, because there are little people looking up at you. There are little people looking up at you. They're looking up at you, number one. And number two, that identity stuff is going to get in the way of the loving. Number two. And number three is going to get away in your aunting, your friendship, whatever. Because why? Wherever you are, there you are. White supremacy benefits and profits off of confusion. Say no, get clear, get strategies, build.
I'm just listening to Lucy's sermon, but I'm just loving the energy. And you're getting 100% and some love in the chat.
Okay, child, we done talked enough. What you think?
I know.
Did we cover the waterfront? Where my phone, child? Okay.
And I want to hint at a little thing. This is my little homework for folks, because I know my people. I know that there are tons of folks that are watching or may watch this later. I want you to interrogate Latinidad and who it excludes. That's my homework. And we're going to pick it up next time. So
there will be a next time. There will be a next time.
We're back.
I hope we made sense. We are back. Yeah, and maybe we'll get you some episodes to hold you over as we get ready to land this 2020 plane, child. So yeah.
Stay intellectually curious, ask questions, be uncomfortable, and we'll be back. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.